Yes, I am on.
Okay, so we might just have to stick with Facebook for a minute. Don't worry, we'll see if we can work that out. Yeah, let's just stick with Facebook. Okay, so Restream, so I'm currently streaming.
Okay.
Cool. There you are. Yeah, brilliant. So stop streaming once you're recordings cannot be paused if the recording quality is set to same as stream. Let me stop streaming a minute.
Yeah, we'll have to think about that in just a It's okay if it's in there. One, two, 1, 2. How am I sounding there, Liv?
Two, 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 two.
I don't know if we need more volume.
Two, 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 two.
And whether this might get in the way of my mic, so I might not put it on. You were on a moment ago, James. With that, you just need to flick the button for to bring you on.
Two, two, two. Yeah, go for it, Kev.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, do. 1, 2, 1, 2, 2. Sorry? Yes, please. So what I'm going to be doing for my session, Kev, is I'm going to be doing the ad stuff. So
have you got your?
we're going to be doing
you're a
maybe
star.
start the car
that
up.
Just completes
I'm
my
going to be
day.
doing
That
the presentation for about half an hour, and then we'll come and do our blue sniff. We'll be using shooting on the camera. So if I leave this way, we want to get the live data that's coming off this thing onto the camera, and a little bit of this action. Yep. But I'll give you a shout. I'll say, can you just do a cut shot of that? Perfect. But yeah. Round them up, Kev. Yep. That's it. Round them up. No, no, no. There's nothing on the screen. It's all local. Everything that's local there, Jay, is local. Yeah, brilliant. Yeah, perfect. Great stuff. All right, cool. Oh, for the clicker, thanks, Rob. Yeah, whatever's on the screen, and is on the screen. There's no control from anywhere else, so we're taking a feed from that camera only, but whatever's on the laptop is going to be recorded on the screen. So Jay was just saying, is there a holding screen or some other?
No, for the beginning, when we introduced the subject, what we wanted was of your business slide, so I can put it in front of
1, 2, 1, 2.
Somewhere in the computers that it lives.
1, 2, 1, 2.
Quite
Oh, there's a
rarely.
nut on the floor here.
Yes. Yes.
1, 2.
I got Bev. If you just pop into that office there, Bev's got one. Yes.
You are live at the moment.
Speaker presentation. What, this one? Yep. Okay. 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 Oh, right. Oh, okay. To stop streaming. Yeah, don't worry. Yeah, don't worry. That's fine. Halfway through what? I don't understand. Yeah. Right. On that. Right. Yeah, that's okay. It's just going to have to be the way it is. Don't worry. It's a minor thing. Don't worry. It's only a minor thing. So if you're going to have to do that, do that. Don't worry. It's only a very minor thing. So and you will have to stop the streaming. Oh, there we are. We're back in. So we're up on the. Yeah. No, don't worry. That's fine. That's the only way we've got to do it. So don't worry. Toot, 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 toot. Very good, very good, very good.
Morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Technical Topics. Very pleased to see you all here today. Hope you enjoy your day with us having a bit of fun and frivolity, and obviously the serious side of a bit of learning, a bit of presentations, and so on. Just a few bits of red tape that we've got to just run through before we actually start. The fire exits, should we need them in the event of an emergency, fire exit over there and then back out through the main door there. If we can then all congregate at the far end of the car park, just by the other side of the portaloos there, we can just make sure that we've got everybody before we then move to an area of safety. Oh, it worries me when somebody takes a photo from the back there. If you do manage to hurt yourself whilst you're here, which would be a bit of a miracle, but somebody might manage to hurt themselves, or if you do feel sort of a bit unwell during the day, please contact either one of the members of staff in the room, or people around the back there who will be able to help you, and we can arrange first aid, ambulance, or hearse, depending how bad it is. The plan for the day is that we've got 6 speakers for you to hear today on various different subjects. We'll be taking a tea break probably around about 10:30 this morning. The lunch will be served in the marquee from around about 12:30, and then we'll be having another tea break around about 2:45 this afternoon. Those we're going to try and keep to those times if we can, even with one of Wilf's presentations. We'll be aiming to close the event around about 4:30 this afternoon. That should give those of you who are staying with us this evening the opportunity to head back to your hotels and do your ablutions before we head to the events venue just around the corner here. And luckily it is just literally around the corner. It's literally a 2-minute drive from here. We'll give you a bit more detail for those of you who are staying this evening, a bit more detail about this evening's event around there a bit later on. So yeah, it'd be a bit of a soiree, so sort of eat, drink and be merry. At the end of each of the presentations, there will be a Q&A session. So if you could sort of if you've got questions during the presentation, if you could make a note of the question, and then we'll throw the floor open to questions and answers at the end of each presentation. If you could just wait until one of the ladies brings the microphone round to you, because that will serve 2 purposes. It will mean that the rest of the crowd can hear what the question is that you're asking, rather than you having to try and shout it out. And also, when we move into our production side of things, we can hear it in the recording as well, which is quite important. So as I say, if you could just wait until the ladies come around with a microphone, then we can make sure that you're mic'd up. Without any further ado, I'd like to introduce technical guru and founder of Technical Topics, James Dillon, who's going to talk about upping your diagnostics. So welcome, James.
Thanks, Rob. Thank you. I think I'm all good for audio. Yeah, welcome everybody. Thanks for coming down and spending your Saturday with us. I'm slightly heartened that it's not blazing sunshine, because you could be thinking you'd be better off out in the garden, but now it's a bit misty. It's probably an equal bet that you're here learning technical stuff, so it's good, and I'm delighted that you're here and you're supporting us. I'm going to talk about upping your diag. Principally, I'm going to pick on a subject matter as well, and leaning casually on top of a brand new particulate matter analyzer, which is kind of coming for the MOT. And there are implications then for us as garage folk with moves afoot. This is currently living in Europe as in several of the big markets. Germany have gone live with it, Holland have gone live with it, Austria and Switzerland have gone live with it, and there's moves afoot that the UK will have it. And it puts the pressure on garages a little bit for now potentially failing cars that have got deletes and things that should be on there that currently aren't on there. So we're going to take a little look at that. In terms of upping your diag, if we can switch to the presentation, I'm going to just run through a few principles of what we're actually going to be doing this morning. Because it's an up your diag, really, we ought to start to talk about what happens when you get it wrong, or what getting it right actually means. And as much as we might focus as technicians on the workshop stuff, we're going to it's all based on the technician. Getting it right kind of relies on the team that you've got around you. So, and what we're finding more and more is where garages are struggling to make money at diag or keep people happy, it turns out that the initial filtering in of the client and the way that they're dealt with up front has a significant impact on the success factor at the back end. And even if you've done an awesome job, if they were kind of booked in wrong and there's a misalignment of expectations, it always turns out to be a bit of a failure and an upset client, even if the car's fixed. So teamwork is one of those things, and kind of process and communication. You know, does your front of house really know how to handle an inquiry of a job that you shouldn't really be having in the workshop? Are they geared up to tell the customer, thanks but no thanks? Or are you open for business for every job that comes your way? Now, as a small business owner, you'll have been the same way I have. There's kind of 30 days to make the mortgage and pay all the bills, and the pressure is to say yes to everything. Yes to everything isn't the right answer. And so there is, I'm going to go through a couple of case studies here and walk you through that. But saying no is actually a powerful tool, and empowering your team to say no to the wrong jobs saves headaches, and actually you get more time. One of the things we've got none of is time, and that's very often because we're fanning around with a job that's tearing our ass out, breaking our heart and making a customer unhappy. And actually beforehand, don't get involved and everyone will be much happier. So saying no is the new saying yes. You're doing yourself a favour. So communication is key. Front of house also becomes key as part of that programme. And really, if you get this bit right, what tends to happen is there's a virtuous circle. You get paid for your diagnostic time, right? You'll find yourself writing diagnostic time off in retrospect for a wrong client with a wrong job. You're going, they're going to go bonkers if I try and charge them that for what we've done on that car. If they were done and managed and handled correctly, they would be with you on the journey of the escalating bill. And it's not a surprise, they're part of the story. It's their life story, it's their car story. So getting paid really is one of those things about comms, and a smooth end-to-end process. But what this relies on is spotting the nightmare job, and we're going to talk about some nightmare jobs, and that's where we're going to get technical. So spotting the nightmare job and politely declining. If you're not geared up to do it, if you're not feeling the love for it, if you don't think the client's right, you've got the option to say no, it's not one for me, potentially. And this way you will ensure your client satisfaction. In the modern world where people have got a right to go on the internet, even if they shouldn't be allowed on the internet, they can go on the internet and leave you reviews which can impact and harm your business going forward. And this makes this bit of managing the client probably a bit more important. So ensuring that you're going to get the right answer, technically the right solution, and end up with a happy client is a big bit that we tend to miss because we're all problem solvers and want to get deep into the nuts and bolts. But actually in the business, you must be aware it's not great to be dealing with everyone, but it is great to be dealing with the people that you like and you know and love. So in the basic premises, you've got client rating. So if you have some empowerment at the booking stage, you should be going red, amber, green for your clients. Red, amber, green. Your front of house should know what a red client sounds like and looks like. They should be quite confident to go, I don't think they're one for us, to you as the business owner. They're kind of empowered to make that decision. Sounds like a no from here. And some of the reasons for that, if we look at that, maybe they're new or existing client and they fail the phone interview. What do you mean it fails the phone interview? Well, your front of house kind of says, tell me a little bit about the problem you're trying to book in, because a lot of jobs, I want to book a diag in. Yeah, not a problem, we can do it Wednesday. Whoa, 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 hang on a minute. Where's the background to that job? You know, the diag job that they booked in is going to be coming for a scan, potentially, and it's got an AdBlue fault, P20EE, let's imagine. Okay, you're setting yourself up for a major failure if that client rocks up on Wednesday for a plug-in for a half-an-hour session, because you're not going to find the answer. So already, you're pre-pissing off your client without even trying, because you said yes to a diag. And front of house goes, oh, it's only a diag. Okay, so there's got to be a level of coaching. Now, if they're a new client that's never used you for anything at all, what loyalty have you got to sorting out some pile of steaming horse shit that you should never get involved with? Sort of zero, right? Do your front of house know that? Are they empowered to do that? So dodging and swerving all the roadblocks. The amber client, so there's another method here talking about with your front of house. You know, are they somebody that's used you before, that's got a job that looks like it's gone a bit pear-shaped or could be tricky and difficult? It's one you're going to have to manage and deal with more sensitively. Or your automatic yeses, so your very loyal clients who use you for everything and they've got several cars. They're kind of yes, even if the job is a piling steam of horse poo, because you've got an outstanding relationship with them. With a new client, you've got no credibility and you've got no kind of goodwill. With an existing client, even if the job's a bit stinky, they will work with you because you've worked with you several times before. But a new client is kind of no unless, do you know what I mean? It's a no unless it looks like a yes. Yeah, and it sort of picks into the bigger business. But so we've got to be able to empower your teams to work out where your client is and decide should you be taking on that job or not. Not all jobs are right for all garages. Yeah, and we've also got the same with vehicles. So we do the kind of red amber thing with vehicles. Is the vehicle one of your core jobs? I got Mrs. Smith on the phone, a new client, and she's got a Maserati Quattroporte bi-turbo that's got an intermittent misfire every third Wednesday. Yeah, and we got a gap in the diary. I booked her in for 4:30 on Thursday. Do you know, front of houses are kind of filling the diary up. They're going, yeah. My job is to fill that calendar up. And actually what we're saying is you can be sensitive to both the car owner and also the person that drives the car. You might find that an amber car here is, you know, it may be somebody that uses you sporadically. The job may sound a bit wonky. It may have intermittentness going in. They may have had several other repair attempts and they're coming to you kind of as the final stop, or they're circling round to you after a 3-year absence. Do you want to get involved? Does your front of house or whoever manages the phone know that that's that kind of job? So we're saying getting diag right is technically what we do, but the business aspect of doing that shouldn't be missed. And then the red jobs, you know, the ones that you know you shouldn't have had in the workshop. And I bet if I ask you to picture a car and a client, right, and close your eyes for 1 second, you'll get that person and that car up in your screens. And you go, oh, it'll give you the shudders. Because we've all been there. We've all accepted a job we shouldn't have. Yeah. Now, they say about the wise man learns by his mistakes. Is there enough of that going on? Or do we end up banging our head against the light bulb again and again, going, oh shit, there's another one of them jobs that we got stuck with. Okay, so that's the definition of insanity. If you carry on doing the same thing repeatedly, expecting a different outcome, you're fooling yourself. So we have to make a change in some way. And the next time you get an ass-kicking job with a red client, take that as the note to have a word with yourself, cop on, change something. Never too busy to make a change positively. And what you'll find is you'll get more time, you'll get less stress, you'll have more money. My God, what's not to like? And you'll swerve the relationship with the people that will drag you down. So saying no is a positive situation in a way if you get that organised with the way that you're running your business. And that's kind of the precursor. And there is a no mayhem booking matrix. I ought to copyright that, really. The no mayhem booking matrix. We got we got the client and the vehicle, and you kind of go red, amber, red, green, amber, amber. So what you can, if your front of house is kind of, this is the policy, you don't need to refer it. If you've got a green client and a green vehicle, they're booking it. If you've got an amber client with a green vehicle, we're booking it. If you've got a green client with an amber vehicle, we're booking it. They can do all that, that's nifty. No booking if you've got any reds. That's just an automatic thanks, but no thanks. You're not for us. We haven't got the correct, you know, we can't help you with that car. There is, if there's no policy, so you've got a green client with a red vehicle, wants a word. I'm not going to be able to book you automatically. I need to refer that up the chain. And you, as the business owner or the senior person in the business, can advise accordingly. But the no booking ones are amber clients with red vehicles. Red clients with any kind of vehicle. Bicycle, horse, don't care, don't come near the place. And then you've got the amber. But these are the dodgy ones. So you should be empowered to be filling the calendar with that. You should be absolutely empowered not to take any of this stuff on and this stuff. These are your questions. I've got somebody that we don't really know that's a bit iffy and a car that's a bit iffy. Or I've got a really good client with a red car. These are only questions that your front of house should be coming to you with if you do this, if you share that with them. And it's going to stream the flow of jobs to make the world a better place. And wouldn't we like some of that? Lower stress and more money, more time. That's what's at the end of doing some of that. So these slides will be shared. You'll get a link to all of this, so don't worry too much about I'm sort of kind of whizzing through it, but you'll get a link to that so you can read that at your leisure. But that's the no mayhem car client booking matrix. Yeah, pretty nifty stuff. So let's go on to diag. So we need to be able to fix some of this stuff. Why is it sometimes we can ace this stuff and other times we kind of struggle a bit as a technician? You know, we're bashing away. Sometimes we can do it, other times we can't. Analysing the function of our technician, we came up with this. It's based on the Pareto principle, and this guy was an Italian mathematician, I think, and he came up with this concept of 80-20. So 80% of your problems are caused by 20% of your clients. 80% of your profit comes from 20% of your clients. It's a kind of factor that kind of works. Yeah, so the Pareto principle is mostly this and some of that. And what we're thinking is, as a technician workforce that you've got in your business, you might be a technician yourself, we've got this issue here of thinking versus doing. So if we said we break down the technical role of the technician, some of it is thinking, other parts are doing. Right, so you've got to think about that and you've got to do something. So if we pick a mechanical job, we're in this zone here. I've got a 20% thought and an 80% do. Right, got a car up on the ramp. My job as a technician is to get the assembled bits on that vehicle into a pile on the floor. And how I know I'm making progress is the big assembly of car becomes a bit smaller and the pile on the floor gets a bit bigger. I'm now making progress. The pile is growing. How are we getting on with that clutch? Look at all my bits on the floor. I'm smashing it. And the thinking bit might be, oh shit, how do I get that bolt out of there? Do I have to drop the subframe a bit to get that out? Or, you know, there's a bit of thinking that goes on, but most of it is the application of mechanical labour, spinning stuff, taking stuff out, piling it on the floor. Yeah, so that's the job of the mechanical. And then how you're making progress in reverse is the pile of bits on the floor gets smaller and the bits on the assembly in the car gets bigger. Right, so I go big, nothing, big pile halfway through, pile shrinks, pile's reassembled, finished. And my thinking is a bit. Oh, always one bolt. There's a big box of them under there, a big grey box under there, yeah. The spare bolts. Where did the spare bolts come from? We lightened some cars during their lifetime. Yeah, so 80-20 thinking and doing. Now, the technician's role when they're starting to apply to diagnosing stuff, that flips on its head. Now, the diagnostic and fault-finding role is 80% thinking and 20% doing. Right? And you will know in yourself when it's gone a bit wonky. Because I've got there's something wrong with that car over there, and it looks like it's got an earth problem to the rear lights. Next thing you look round and the seats are out. All the trims from one side are on the floor. Not a measurement's been made because technician is in doing mode. Right, I've got an earth fault to find. Let's make a pile of parts as I make progress through that job. I'm treating that like a clutch job. Take off. Right, okay. Now I'm ready to measure some stuff. And if you'd measured that first, if you'd gone into thinking mode, you'd go, well, where's the most sensible place to measure that wire? Ah, yeah, there's a fuse box here, and then there's a rear fuse box there. So I can pop down the access cover or pop up the access cover, and I can measure either end of it to work out even if I need to take something off or not. And if you've kind of gone from doing a clutch, your next job up is a diag, how do you encourage your teams or yourself to switch modes of thinking? And I will say you almost can't because you're in still doing mode. And that's where we get it slightly wrong, and we almost need to find a different way of getting into the zone and go, right, diag is almost all about thinking and not about doing. Being knee-deep in panels, we call it, stripping stuff down to get going is not the way to do it. No, so we need a slightly different approach. Thinking or doing, am I mechanical or diag? Okay, we talk about when we start to do our diag, the 4 rights, and you would have probably seen this. The 4 rights is about a guiding set of rules when it all goes a bit wonky. At the outset, with your thinking, not doing mindset, we talk about measuring the right thing in the right way at the right time with the right tool. And what you'll try and do is find out what's wrong with the vehicle. If you're analysing it correctly, you will get some evidence or data that says you're on the right track. If you're measuring it incorrectly, how do you measure it incorrectly? Well, you're using an ohm meter and not a voltmeter. That's a classic example of measuring the right thing in the wrong way with the wrong tool. You're never going to know that that's a fault. And so, as a technician, it's our responsibility to select the most appropriate tool to do the analysis to get the data. I need to be able to confirm or refute that. So where this kind of helps is when it all goes tits up and it's gone dark outside, you go, gosh, you know, I was only 10 minutes on this job. you can go back through and work out which one was wrong, because there will be one that's wrong. Something that you're doing probably won't be in the right frame or zone. And really it's a bit of a mantra to get you to kind of Control, Alt, Delete and reset. Right, get yourself back in the zone here a minute, change the way you're doing stuff, because we need to be able to find this job. The second big issue that we've got then is an overload of stuff. Right, I've got all this stuff off the car. My favourite one is the Scan Tool Live Data. Scan Tool Live Data, one of the cars we use for training on the AdBlue course is the Transit. Right, it's a 23 plate Transit with AdBlue. That Transit's got 1,013 parameter datas in the engine management unit. How I know is because it tells you the number at the top, 1,013. Right, which 4 did I need? God, you don't really know. So you get kind of the first 4 up and you start getting a bit keen and going, yeah, that's not it. And you scroll down again and that's going a bit weird now. Adaptive slopes on lean integrations. You go, oh, I don't know. Give it a quick rev. Did the numbers change? Yeah, they changed, right, so it's not fucked completely then. No, there is something going on. But there is a point where you kind of get massed in the data. You get stuck in that zone of stuff. And whether it's relevant or irrelevant, we don't really know. And our job really is to take that data and sort of merge it into this information piece. And the information piece starts to take the little bits and join them up. And I'll tell you what you might be thinking about. We've got all data here. As an example, I go to the all data diagrams and it kind of refers me. So the beginning bit of data might be about the location of the device, and then there might be description and operation. And I've got these little bits of data which are starting to feather together now. I've got a fault code, I've got a component location, I've got a description and operation, and I can apply what I know, my knowledge about that, with a bit of just-in-time learning, and that starts to piece it together until I get this final zone of wisdom. By adding up the data and thinking about how that makes sense as information, applying knowledge, I get wisdom. And there's a brilliant example of wisdom over there. Wisdom is knowing that's a fruit, but not putting it in a fruit salad. And much about the data that we have on vehicles is like that. You need to have that little bit of subtle understanding that it's kind of this, but kind of that, but also not kind of the other. And so wisdom and knowledge is what we need. And really filtering through the data is where we need to get to. So I love a good bar chart, and I've got a bar chart here that we developed. So if I said to you, lads, on all the cars in all the world, or the breakdown of cars in the world, where did all the faults come from? So this is analysed 20,000 bulletins from various sources, manufacturers' bulletins, aftermarket bulletins. I kind of looked through and I thought 20,000 is a really good number of jobs that have been processed. I mean, 20,000 jobs, and I went across the bottom here is a number of fault codes. So with no fault codes, what was the breakdown of what caused the failure? So bottom one is software, second one is sensor, third one is mechanical, fourth one is electrical, fifth one is component failure, and the sixth one is contamination of some sort. And these are all sorts of jobs and all sorts of cars across all sorts of brands. And I went pretty wide like that because I wanted to know, well, on average, what does it work out to be? And the average is, there's always some bits of software involved in fixing a car. It may not be a component failure, it may be. But if you look at that chart, can you see there's a kind of average distribution? Almost doesn't matter what you're working on. These are the proportions based on between 1 and 6 fault codes, what the likelihood of is the problem is going to be. And the bulk of them are in component failures. Yep, there's a chunk of them there of software. So have you got the ability to update software in an ECU? Could start off with, if you can't do that, well, you're ruling out about 20% of all jobs, or on this scale, it's not quite 20%, but 10% of your jobs will need software. And if you haven't got that, you're not going to be able to fix it. Mechanical issues, yeah, there's a bulk of them that are mechanical, kind of same proportion going through. There's a similar proportion of sensor issues. There's a similar proportion of electrical issues. But it was a very interesting look at, okay, what do we need to be thinking about when we go to a job? Because what happens is, as a technician, we suffer something called bias. What is a bias? A bias is when the phone rang and the client said, my car is doing X, and you thought Y, yeah, that sounds like a ... insert whatever thing you want to insert there. it's very difficult as a technician for you to change that bias and forget it and approach that job with a completely fresh mind. Although it thinks and sounds a bit like this, it's going to be something completely different. How do you snap out of that? Because what we end up doing is trying to prove ourselves right, even unconsciously. We're going up against the thing I thought it was until I completely and utterly prove it definitely isn't. And then and only then do I refresh my brain and go, yeah, I've definitely done that to death and it's not what I thought it was. Now I'm kind of struggling, I'm behind the curve, I've spent some money and I need to try and fix that. And so I've got to change the way I'm looking at it. So one of the things we've got to think about is the unbiased approach. We've got trends, but really what we ought to be trying to do is thinking about clearing our mind. It is not going to be what you think it is sometimes. Now, if you're working on a single brand, there's some benefit in working on a single brand because most of the stuff you think it is, it probably is. But you're also in danger of being too far that way. Get the easy wins, and most of the stuff you think it is going to be the thing you think it is. You're in even a more difficult situation when it isn't. So it wasn't that thing. You know, this wire always rubs through there, or this is always an EGR valve on one of these, or it's always the pressure tank on the DPF. Whatever it is, it's enabling yourself to stop at the point where that's not offering any more benefit. So I talk about fault codes, and here are two really popular codes that are coming up, and we call this AdBlue the dreaded 2. So these two fault codes on AdBlue give you a bit of heartache and misery. One stems around kind of AdBlue efficiency, the other one stems around DPF efficiency. Yeah, and these two basic codes in there can cause a lot of grief and aggravation. I know some of you guys have been down the AdBlue kind of training and diagnostic route, but this is a really great one. When fault codes are also kind of tend to be of no help, because these codes are so wide and big, essentially it's saying somewhere from the front of the car to the back of the car, you've got an issue. But I can't really tell you where, because this is an efficiency fault code. Somewhere the system has gone wrong. This code is really no better than a warning light. You've already got one of them on the other end. This code gives you zero direction. It's impossible to get to the root cause from these codes. Impossible. Completely impossible. You do not know what it is. These codes will prompt you and nudge you into trying to make a routine or a decision-making process. And these two codes are what we need to probably dig into. The second thing that works against us as our diag, on the board up there I've got something called a drive cycle. Now we used to talk about drive cycles back in the days of EOBD and OBD2 when they came out in 2000s, when we start to get catalytic converters and exhaust gas oxygen sensors. This is a drive cycle for a modern diesel. And it starts off with, if you have a fault that you solve and you clear all the diagnostic data, AdBlue particularly is a real mission to get the car back into having the light off and something working. And the drive cycle is categorized by these major categories at the top here. The vehicle has to prove the elements that contained within it function. So you can't just clear the button, dunk dunk, I've reset the light. AdBlue, because it's kind of legislative and aimed at making sure that the pollution of the atmosphere isn't happening, then says, okay, if you think the problem's gone because you've cleared the button, all you need to do now is drive it and for it to pass the test. And if you drive it and it passes the test, I agree with you and I will clear the light. So clearing the fault code is a request to clear the light, and the ECU says, yeah, but prove it, mate. And this is why we end up going on monster long road tests. Right, because the car is going, right, okay, you think you had an AdBlue efficiency fault, drive it, big boy, and show me. And you get into something called an inducement state. Something has induced a fault. It has to be de-induced, that status. So you have to drive the car along 60, 70, 80, 90, 100 miles, and the system starts to function. And when it functions like the expected function, it will choose to clear the light for you. The AdBlue counter reset will disappear, and you're 0 miles to the next no restart. They'll all sort of disappear. But this is the second thing that's causing a lot of people grief and aggravation with AdBlue. I can't just clear the light. No, for good reason. That's designed to be like that. The system, no, they're not being an arse. No, that's in the legislation. The manufacturers are kind of playing to the law there. They can't just clear the light without proving it's fixed itself. And so we have to know this. Part of our link back to OE data is that you will be talked about drive cycles and system function. So you can look it up and go, right, okay, I've looked down my fault code list, and this one, right, it needs a drive cycle. I've got to drive that vehicle for the system to agree that we've passed that or not passed it. And there's a lot of frustration out there that I can't just clear the light. No, you won't. You won't. This is Euro 6. Guess what's coming? Euro 7. Euro 6 was so great, we've decided to improve upon it. So all the madness and mayhem that we're seeing currently now with AdBlue and you know, the emission system is going to get even worse, which is one of the subsets of reasons why we've got this particulate analyzer, and why now we're also looking at, I've got a couple here, NOx analyzers. So yeah, it starts to be slightly bigger picture about trying to diagnose this stuff. But it all starts with the suck, squish, bang, blow. So my AdBlue efficiencies. If I said to you, where is your mind? If I said I've got an AdBlue fault, what do you picture? Close your eyes, what are you picturing? You're picturing probably a bucket of this stuff. Oh, AdBlue. I've got an AdBlue fault. So the fault AdBlue is faulty, or there's a fault with the AdBlue. Okay, the fault that you get with AdBlue efficiency has got nothing to do with the AdBlue. Potentially, it might be an AdBlue fault, but there's so much else involved, we've got to think bigger picture. So we go into that 80-20, now 80% thinking before we do anything. The 20% doing, we'll get to that. I've got an AdBlue related issue. How does that work? Well, if we examine what happens in the internal combustion engine, when we get all the banging going on in the middle here, I suck in air, I put some fuel in there, set fire to it, and the rest goes out to the atmosphere. I take the calorific value of the fuel and I get it to spin the crankshaft and attach it to the wheels, and whoosh, I'm off. So this combustion process is pretty critical, and if we get it wrong, this bad stuff over here starts to escalate and elevate. And if that escalates and elevates, the stuff I've got in the exhaust pipe does a good job at hoovering that stuff up. So it tries to reduce this stuff, based on the principle that that bit went okay. What bit? You know, the suck, the squish, the bang, the blow, the fueling. And if that went awesomely, then the after treatment's got quite an easy job to do. Yeah? Cool. Engine was efficient, AdBlue was a minor use. Okay, well, what happens if this bit wasn't efficient? What do you mean wasn't efficient? I don't know. Let's imagine your injectors are wanked. What do you mean the injectors are wanked? The car's not misfiring. Okay, there's ear dyno wanked and there is inside the cylinder wanked. They are two different levels. Anyone send a set of injectors off to a specialist and they came back as okay, you're in the minority. Because mostly you go, hang on a minute, I sent these away for testing and they came back fucked. He said they're all wanked. But I listened to the car, they sound like a Minter. Okay, because what they're checking, the level of precision that's required, is distinctly different than the point it gets to a misfire. So the injectors are slowly wearing out from kilometre 1 until, if it's a transit, kilometre 22, they are actually on their ass. And all the way that they're failing, the bang, the quality of the combustion, the emphasis of the whoosh, if that goes in any way wrong, this bit over here grows, gets worse. And then the bit we got at the back end has a lot of work to do. It has a lot of work to do, so it's trying to clean this stuff up. So when we're thinking about AdBlue efficiency, what you've got to put your hat on and go is the AdBlue is the after treatment. The after treatment relies on this bit going okay. If this bit isn't okay, the after treatment is going to struggle. And it's going to complain first, before the injectors complain and before anything else complains. AdBlue is the last thing in the process, going to put his hand up and go, what the fuck are you feeding me? I'm struggling. So the fault codes of AdBlue efficiency and system efficiency could be down to engine-related stuff. And we go back to our old trusty friend. What was the quality of the combustion like in the cylinder? How good were the suck, squish, and the bang and the blow? Do we have a solid, sealed cylinder with excellent valve timing, a good sealing around the bores? Did I get some nice big bangs? And we start to talk about stuff like the picoscope, where we can hook that thing on and do a relative compression and work out loosely what's happening. One of our tests we should be doing on every car that comes through the door, it's the only reason I would buy an oscilloscope if I was starting again, is to do relative compressions. If I didn't use it for anything else, that is going to earn me a fortune. If I take the Pico oscilloscope cover off it and I just write relative compression machine, it's going to earn me a fortune. Never mind all the other stuff it can do. And this stuff has to be validated. Every job you get in that's a diesel that's got an emissions fault, how good does the suck, squish, bang, blow? The second big factor we ought to be looking at is the quality of the injection. And we got Andy coming up later on. We're going to set fire to some fuel in a transparent combustion chamber and get into some of this a bit later on. So I'm just going to introduce it as a concept. You need to be sure that this is okay. Anyone know how they get the holes in a nozzle of an injector? Small Chinese fellow with a very small drill bit? No. They are laser etched. So they're so small they can only be piloted with a laser. Anyone seen a brick in the tide down at the beach? You go to the beach, you're walking along and you see an old house brick and it looks like an ice cube that's been in a cup of coffee for 10 minutes. Kind of all the edges have gone off it. It's no longer brick shaped, it's rounded. That is fluid erosion. So there's a bit of it's being bouncing around, see, bouncing off other stuff. So my little hole in the injector from kilometre 1 starts to get elongated just with fluid flow. It wears out naturally, even if no bad stuff has happened, until it turns into an oval. Once it goes oval, the spray that comes out of that is wrong, and then the mixture in the cylinder is wrong, and the quality of the combustion is wrong, and then the gas output is wrong, and then the AdBlue system can't cope. It's kind of leg bones connected to the knee bone. All this stuff is interlinked. But the quality of the bang is absolutely critical. They have to be absolutely soundo. So there needs to be a way of doing that. The fact is, here's an AdBlue system on the back end. Oxygen sensors, temperature sensor, a close couple oxidation cat, a mixer plate, an AdBlue injector, an oxygen sensor or a NOx sensor. I've got a mixer plate, and then I've got a DPF. The DPF's got some pressure sensors, another temperature sensor, an oxygen sensor, and for Euro 7 you might have another AdBlue injector because the one just wasn't enough. And then you've got an SCR cat, and the SCR cat's at the back end taking all the bad stuff out. That 6,000 pound emission reduction machine is all about trying to keep that little wed reg under control, and it works brilliantly as long as the input is okay. But it's running right on the ragged edge. It can't cope with a lot of extra stuff. So if you start feeding it rubbish, it all starts to break down and struggle to cope. And that results in whatever comes out the back being a bit too high. And if that's a bit too high, ba-ding, my AdBlue efficiency is below the threshold. What do you mean, the AdBlue efficiency? Because it isn't just AdBlue, we've got a load of other stuff going on. No, but I've been programmed to say AdBlue if I mean injectors, if I mean compression, if I mean, the fluid's no good, if I mean the efficiency's no good. If I mean anything else is wrong, I can only tell you that the system is broken. We've also then got, this is a little layout of the super duper high and low pressure EGR system. Dual EGR, because one EGR was never enough. A bit like New York, New York. So good we named it twice. 2 EGR systems on the car. High pressure EGR at the front end here, sucked in through the air mass meter into the engine. We get our explosions. Comes out into the exhaust pipe. We've got a little channel that feeds that gas back in. So we've got a high pressure circuit over here. And then at this end, in this other blue bit here, we have a low pressure EGR circuit. 2 sets of EGR to try and reduce the level of the bad gases. And this is kind of the big guns. So in emission control, for a diesel, most of the cover the bad stuff up is done with EGR from an AdBlue perspective. This is the #1 reduction method, is EGR. AdBlue is kind of polishing the edge off it, but this does all the heavy lifting. The high and low pressure EGR are responsible for the vast majority of the reduction of the NOx. Guess what happens if you have a problem with your EGR system? What is left in the system to pick that up is your AdBlue injectors, SCR cat. So what ends up happening is if the EGR performance starts to drop, the AdBlue usage starts to go up because it can't cope any other way. And we get into this principle that says, in an AdBlue reduction system, of all the bad stuff that comes out of the engine, 80% of that is catered for at source. So we trap 80% of the AdBlue and 80% of the NOx reduction and convert it at the engine side. So combustion's got to be good, fuel's got to be good, EGR is good. The feed gas NOx, what is coming out of the engine, what we're feeding into the SCR system has to be tip-top. If it's not, then my NOx system at the back end should only be polishing the edge off it. It should take it off that last 20% to get it to pass and be awesome. But 80% of the reduction is done at the front end. Therefore, if this starts to go down, that starts to go up. And it says, you're feeding me bad gas, I've got to start to work too hard, and it starts to complain. But there are factors here that mean, when we're doing a diag, our number one measurement is, and has to be, what is the feed gas NOx? And if you don't know that, you will not fix that vehicle. So if you phone me up, I've got the AdBlue job from hell here, it's been around every single garage and everything's been renewed, I'll say, Dave, what's your engine out NOx? And you'll tell me what that number is, and I say, oh, you know what to do then, don't you? So if we've got a benchmark of what that should be, and we've got a little NOx analyzer we'll show you a bit later on, if you measure the feed gas NOx coming out of the engine, you can measure this at the DPF pressure pipe. Pull that pipe off, stick it in this little handheld gas analyzer, and read the NOx number. If that NOx number here is above 200 parts per million, go to the engine and fix it. That's it. Do not mess about with any of the after treatment, because that is just telling you it's struggling. If you measure that engine out NOx and that number is too high, you have to go back up in here and fix this. So you've got a compression problem, you've got an injector problem, you've got an EGR problem. The bloody thing's using too much oil, has got the wrong oil in it. Your engine out NOx is the key measurement that says, no, you go in this direction or you go in that direction. So on vehicles, do you want to just grab that camera a second, Kev? Because what we're going to do for the last 2 minutes that I have got a NOx sensor here. And this is a standard NOx sensor, it's a Bosch NOx sensor. And what I've got is a box of tricks here, and I've taken the ECU that's on the NOx sensor, that bit there, I've hooked into the CAN bus, and I'm decoding the live NOx readings off of this thing, and I'm showing it there on a laptop, which Kev's going to beam up on the screen in a minute. I don't know if you can beam that up on the screen a second there. There we go. Yeah, if you just go in a bit closer there, Kev, you'll see the scrolling data coming up the board there. NOx sensor is just, it's reading NA ppm at the minute. So this is a NOx sensor running in fresh air. It's off the car, it's the same as one on the car, and I'm going to show you a really interesting phenomenon. And I always want to do that. That's it. If you're of a certain vintage, you'll get that. So the NOx sensor's reading. Now, what I'm going to show you is a real spooky thing. In here, this is the smell of old people home. It's ammonia. Right? Ammonia. Ammonia comes from AdBlue, but it is not AdBlue. AdBlue contains ammonia trapped in it in something called uric acid. It's held in a fluid. And when I start to burn that, get it hot and convert it, it turns into ammonia. And ammonia gets into the SCR cat and kills all the NOx bits. But there is a buggeration that goes on, which would further complicate your NOx values. Here we go. See the NOx reading there is 0 parts per million. 0 ppm. That sensor measures between 0 and 1650 parts per million. It's got an accuracy of plus or minus 10%, 10 parts per million. It's very, 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 very accurate. So if I stick the AdBlue sensor into the NOx sensor into the AdBlue, you'll notice that nothing really happens. It stays very, very low, 1 or 2 parts per million. But if I convert the AdBlue through the hydrolysis and thermolysis that goes on in the system, watch what happens. If you're believing live data and you've got ammonia in the bag, which like I have here, if I put that near the ammonia, say I've got a dribbling injector or the injector spraying too badly, this is in the bag. Inside the bag is the container, and the container's never had the lid off it. So I'm now measuring the ambient ammonia that kind of is the smell of a closed lidded box. And you can see I've now got 87 parts per million measuring the waft of old people. and it's currently hitting the failure level. If that was on a car, and I saw my engine out NOx at 187 parts per million, I've got a failure. The AdBlue system is broken, I would say to myself. No, it can't be. 258, 260, right, that's a problem. That's just ammonia. So the problem with onboard sensors are, the very thing that they're hooked up to and allied to, the AdBlue, works with the output of the sensor. So whoever put that in a car obviously didn't talk to the bloke that was designing the fluid, because there's a definite mismatch. It can't be the same way. That led us to having this system here with the AdBlue analyzer. So the last thing I'm going to show you, I'm going to take 1 minute to do this. I think I'm still on time. I'm going to switch this thing on. This is why we used to use the standalone NOx sensor. So in all the AdBlue courses in the early days, we made a standalone sensor to do the diag because you couldn't trust the one on the car. And yet what we found was actually the ammonia then made that kind of redundant, because if you've got dribbling AdBlue or dripping injector or something that's gone wrong, it screws with the system. And that could mean that you end up replacing the NOx control unit and the sensor. A dribbling AdBlue injector causes the rear NOx sensor to read 3,000 parts per million, it gets a new one. Right, fair enough, because the sensor's goosed. Put a new one in there, and that also reads 3,000 parts per million. Oh dear, it wasn't the sensor. No, it wasn't the sensor. We now know it's probably the ammonia. So, I'm just going to go to measure mode here. The reason we went to this thing, this gas analyzer, you should be seeing that on the screen now. I'm going to put that in the same wafty box of ammonia, and what you'll see is, put the sensor on one bit. You can see on the left-hand screen, Kev, you show them the laptop screen, the onboard sensor is going to creep up. It's for 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100 parts per million. The sensor, if you go back to the screen there, Kev, that's measuring the same environment. It's not affected. It's 0 parts per million. So when we do our AdBlue analysis and diagnosis, why you've seen us talking about this particular NOx analyzer is because it's the only reliable method of diagnosing the system and where it's gone wrong. You can't kind of even believe onboard sensors. Thanks, Kev. That's awesome. And that kind of does the full circle back to the 4 rights of diagnosis. It turns out that one of your rights is wrong on the car. You're measuring the wrong thing in the wrong way with the wrong device. Whoever put NOx sensors in an ammonia situation? I don't know. So that's pretty much what I wanted to show you. Basic beginning parts of your AdBlue diag. Engine out NOx is the #1 thing you need. You need some reliable way of measuring it, and that will cut down your misdiagnosis and your time by millions. So I think then that's probably me done. We've got a minute for any questions. Have we got a minute for any questions, Rob, Master of Ceremonies? Anybody got a question? There we go. Thank you. Before we hand over to Wilfred.
Just wanted to know what roughly the ppm of the engine up NOx level is. 200
is a failure.
200 ppm.
I'm getting very excited about I have to do something about that. They'll generally run, if you've got the thing running at idle, we'll have a look later on, it'll be down there in single or tens of it, might be at 10, 20, 30. As we drive it, there's a bit of transient movement, but if you've got an average that's over 200, it's a fail. Yeah, and that's really the big, I'm going up this end, thanks. Yeah, perfect. Okay, anybody else got another question? New questions? Yep. Okay, Soren at the front there. Better be an easy one, mate.
Hello, James.
Hey, Soren.
Hi, everybody. I recently bought that tool of you,
yes.
Which is I was a bit struggling to get it set up, but it's all done now.
Awesome.
It's a brilliant tool. Yeah, it does what it says in a tin. But what I wanted to ask you, what is the average, like the gentleman asked earlier, is that at idle 200 is a failure?
No, as an average, so if you're driving the vehicle and you're seeing 200 parts per minute, it never goes below that, it's a fail. Really, as you tick over in the workshop, it should be maybe 10, 20, 30. As you drive the vehicle, you will get it to creep up a bit more. So you might see occasionally it drifts up above 200, but then it comes back down again. The average number, I would say, would be 100 parts per million. The fail zone is 200. So if you can't get that thing below 200 parts per million, it's a fail.
Is that, is that like on an extended road test?
You need to drive it. Yeah, driving it. That's it, Soren. Yeah.
Thank you.
Driving it. Yeah. So they need driving, of course, because the system function changes. The two EGRs work in different RPM ranges. So the high pressure EGR will never work when you're on boost. It's when the low pressure EGR kicks in. Yeah, so you need to drive it to work out which if the EGR systems aren't working, because you'll notice if the EGR low cooler's blocked, as you go on boost and the low pressure EGR doesn't flow, you'll notice the NOx creeps up. So you can kind of diagnose low pressure EGR issues with the NOx analyzer based on when the numbers change. It's a bit, yeah, it's a bit sort of roundabout, but yeah. So now you've got the means to measure it, you're also not falling foul of this bloody ammonia thing. Pipe, or at the tailpipe, or we're sticking at the back end. So we can measure engine out NOx, and that tells me the efficiency of the AdBlue control system, or I'm measuring engine out NOx at the DPF pipe to measure the feed gas. So I kind of go, if the feed gas is okay, I'm then going up to the tailpipe, because feed gas says my engine bit's okay, the tailpipe says the SCR system's okay. And I basically split the system in two, and then evaluate the function of both bits. Yeah, perfect. Okay. I think that's it. I better head off the stage. Thanks, everyone. I'm about later on if you need anything else.
Thank you very much, James. Good insight into some of the practical problems that we're facing with NOx analysis, and particularly the fact that our NOx sensors get fooled by over-adding AdBlue. So it's an interesting thing to look at there. Wolf's just getting himself set up at the moment, so I'm just going to switch over to his